I'm really proud that we can present Dr. Franjo Grotenhermen. He is Executive Director of the ICBC, the International Association for Cannabis as Medicine. He also was the chairman for the Medical Cannabis Petition here in Germany. He's organizer of the ACM, which is the National Association for Cannabis as a Medicine. He's the consultant and founder of the Patients Network. He is consulting a lot of cannabis patients in Germany. And last but not least, everybody knows in Germany who's involved in medical cannabis that without Franjo Grotenhermen, without his work, the recent law would not exist. Franjo Grotenhermen is working to change that law as the first MD in Germany, and he's working on it since nearly 30 years. And I think everybody owes him a lot of respect and a lot of for his engagement for cannabis as medicine. I'd say he's the one who made it possible here, or he took a big part of it. And thank you very much. And Dr. Franjo Grotenhermen.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, for your kind introduction, and Alex for the invitation. Well, I've given the name to my talk, Keeping the Balance. I will talk a little bit of the endocannabinoid system and the exocannabinoid system. So, next slide, please. So, I've put the basis of what we are doing in the beginning. It is from the principles of the World Health Organization, which says the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being, without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic or social condition. We know that the social conditions concerning cannabis are very different, so we should make the principles of the WHO reality. So next one. The topics of what I am talking is the science behind the medical use of cannabis. This is the function of the endocannabinoid system. If you understand the function, then you know more than most doctors. The broad spectrum of the medical uses and the way to make cannabis available to those in need. Of course, we have to work together in this field. Next one. No, this is not the next one. Oh, the next one. Yes, it's the next one. Sorry, yes. So, the components of the endocannabinoid system, the endogenous cannabinoid system. Of course, the endocannabinoids. While we are sitting here, we are producing our own cannabinoids in the body. And they exist in every mammal and birds everywhere. Then the cannabinoid receptors, we know best two, but there are others. Vanillate receptors, for example, the CBD cannabidiol is binding to the vanillate receptor 2, so this is not only cannabinoid receptors. The enzymes that induce the production of endocannabinoids and those who break them down. So these are the elements of the endocannabinoid system. Next one. So this is a... Oh, next. It comes one after the other. Okay. Conditions with endocannabinoid involvement. Of course, diseases of energy, metabolism, for example, appetite, and so on. The next one. Pain and inflammation, of course. A major issue when it comes to treatment of diseases. Next one. Central nervous system. Multiple sclerosis, well known, Alzheimer's, epilepsy. Many central nervous system diseases and physiological states are associated with endocannabinoids. Then cardiovascular and respiratory disorders, we all know asthma, for example, but also, for example, circulating shock or something. Then eye disorders, we know glaucoma, but also other eye disorders. Then cancer. We know that the endocrine system is altered in most cancers. The endocrine level is usually higher, and there are more chemical receptors. Next one is gastrointestinal and liver disorders, for example, inflammatory bowel disease. And then musculoskeletal disorders, for example, arthritis and reproductive infections. For example, anandamide has something to do with fertilization. Well, of course, then next one. Well, to give you an example how the endocrine system works in the brain, as I said, to keep the balance, what does it mean? The endocrine system, the major function is inhibition of overactivation of other neurotransmitters. For example, in the nervous system, it's worked like this. When there is brain injury, for example, with apoplexy or something, then there are transmitters which are produced, for example, glutamate, but also other damaging systems such as free radicals, and they change they damage the nervous system in addition to the first stroke. And then to counteract this effect, endocannabinoids are released and they counteract this effect. So this is, I will give you another example later where it is working in the periphery, not only the brain but also the periphery. So the next one. So this is, next slide please. So I see it comes one by one. So we can read it again. Go back, so you can read it. So it's damage. First is the damage, the production of glutamate and other damaging substances, and then the endocannabinoids are produced and reduce this damage. So without the endocrine system, most damage of stroke and every other thing, myocardial infarction, would be greater than without. So, next one. So, next one. Yes, I will give you a short overview of cannabinoids and the endocrine system. What is cannabinoid receptors? We usually talk about the cannabinoid-1 receptor, or the cannabinoid-2 receptor. The cannabinoid-1 receptor, which is present in the brain, for example, and is responsible for the high, but also many other effects, for example, muscle relaxation, increase of appetite, and so on. Then the CB2 receptor, which is in the immune system, which is really activated and have anti-inflammatory effects. But also validatory receptors. I told you that CBT is binding to validatory receptors, but also many endocannabinoids are binding to the validatory receptors. And there are other receptors. For example, PPAR, JAMA, is a nuclear receptor, which is not on the surface of the brain, surface of the cell, but on the nucleus. And other receptors, GPR 55 and so on. This is a large field of investigation and research. Next, then the endocannabinoids, of course, we all know anandamide, and which was detected in 1992, and then in 1995 the second was 2-AG, arachidonibutyl, and we know about 200 fatty acid derivatives, which have a very different structure than the plant cannabinoids. So they bind to the same receptor, but they have very different molecules, structures. So the next one, cannabis of the cannabis plant. We have about 120 now. Most of this research has been done by the University of Mississippi, by Dr. Elsoli in the last decades. Well, the best known are THC and CBD, of course, but there are many others. About 10 of the 120 cannabis belong to the THC type. usually the cannabis belong to a certain type. For example, the THC type comprises tetrahydrocannabinol, but also tetrahydrocannabinol acid 1A, tetrahydrocannabinol acid B, but also tetrahydrocannabivarine, which is researched with regards to obesity, but because it reduces appetite. There are other groups, CBD types and other types. So, but not all cannabinoids are found in one plant. These are only cannabinoids which have at least have detected in one plant. So usually there are only 5, 6, or 7 cannabinoids in one plant in relevant concentrations. Next one. So to understand, well, the endocrine system is interfering with other neurotransmitters. And to understand this, I want to tell you how nerve cells talk to each other. How does signal transduction work from nerve to nerve? Next, please. Yes, this is first the nerve cell above, which gives a signal, which means it sends out a neurotransmitter. Next one is the gap in the middle, where the neurotransmitter is working through from the presynaptic cell to the postsynaptic cells. We call this gap synapse. So, next one. And below is the nerve cell which receives the signal. And the words of the language of the nervous system are neurotransmitters. We have many different neurotransmitters. The next one. Well, this is a similar picture as the one before. We see the presynaptic nerve cell, which is on the left, and there is the stimulus 1, an action potential, and this sends out gamma aminobutyric acid, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain. And this is activating a receptor on the other side, on the postsynaptic nerve. And if the stimulus, the gamma transmission, is very strong, then endocannabinoids are built up. They are given into the synapse, into this gap, and they retrograde back, inhibit neurotransmitter release. So this is how the endocannabinoids raise their voice in this communication between the nerve cells. And the endocannabinoids are activating CD1 receptors, for example, here in this case, on the presynaptic nerve cell. And this is communicating with the stimulus 1 and says, hey, it's enough, we need to keep down, we have enough GABA on the other side, just stop talking now. This is the effect. If you understand this, you know more than most doctors in everywhere. This is retrograde inhibition, because the endocrine system is reacting on neurotransmitter release, and this is on all neurotransmitters. That's why the physiological functions are so diverse, and they are put into the gap, into the synapses on demand. Just when the body needs it, then they are produced and given directly into the synapse. Okay, next one. I told you that I will, yes, they come later. Let's have some time to read. Okay. So where do endocannabinoids act? Where do you find this endocannabinoid system? I only worked on the C1 receptor and the CB2 receptors because otherwise it would be too complicated. The best investigated receptor is the C1 receptors. This was in 1987 when it was clear there must be a receptor in the brain, Before, it was unknown whether there would be a non-specific action of cannabinoids. But since that time, we know there's a specific action. Cannabinoids are binding to receptors, specifically. And the C1 receptor was first called a brain receptor, because it was first detected in the brain. But we now know that it is present nearly everywhere. Bones, skin, lungs, heart, bowel, everywhere. C1 receptor, which makes the high, but also pain reduction, appetite increase, anti-nausea, anti-inflammatory, and so on. And the CB1-2 receptor is only found in cells of the immune system. So this is very different. It was detected later. We now know the structure of the CB1 and CB2 receptor, and there's a similarity of about 65% between the two receptors. And there are some substances which only bind to the CB2 receptor. For example, caryophyllene, which is a terpene. So not only cannabis contains cannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, but also other plants. And echinacea, which is used in cold. If you catch a cold, you can use echinacea. And substances of this echinacea are binding to CB2 receptors. So this is stimulating the immune system and has anti-inflammatory and anti-allergic effects. So next one. So I promised you that I give you another example to understand the mechanism of work of the endocrine system. I thought I'd tell you something about irritable bowel syndrome. The bowel contains about 100 to 200 million nerve cells. What is 200 million nerve cells? Well, that is the number of nerve cells which you find in the brain of dogs or cats. So the bowel is as intelligent as a dog or a cat. It's called the second brain. Irritable bowel syndrome is very common. It's about 5 to 50%, depending on country. So it's about 10% in Germany, and other countries 5% or 50%. So this is a very common disease and difficult to treat. So we have not much to do with it. We cannot help people very much. Next one. What is irritable bowel syndrome? You don't find real damage, but you find an overactivity of the nerve cells in the bowel. And so we know that since endocannabinoids are acting against overactivity, it's also in the bowel, not only in the brain. The language in the bowel, that is the neurotransmitters, is the same as in the brain. And endocannabinoids counteract the overactivity. And if the endocrines attempt to rebalance the system, then phytocannabinoids may help. We may give phytocannabinoids to people with irritable bowel syndrome, and this may work. I have many patients with irritable bowel syndrome who are treated with cannabis. Next one. So, the major role of the endocrine system is to counteract the overactivity of all neurotransmitters: dopamine, GABA, glutamate, serotonin, leucine, noradrenaline, etc. It can best serve our body if all elements of the system are well balanced. That's what the endocrine system tries to do. There is an overactivity and it tries to rebalance it. We call this homeostasis, and the result is health and well-being. So this is the major function and the back of medical cannabis. So now we come to medical cannabis. On this page and the next page, there are conditions of my patients whom I treat with cannabis products. These are about 50 different diagnoses. You find such diverse things as allergies, acne inversa, anorexia, anxiety, asthma, attention deficit, very, very broad spectrum. We can usually say there are 5 groups. First group is chronic pain, different pains, phantom limb pain, migraine, everything, pain. Then the second large group is perhaps psychiatric disorders, for example, depression, ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so on. Then we have chronic inflammatory diseases, for example, Crohn's disease or arthritis, and so on. Then we have neurological disorders such as epilepsy or spasticity or Tourette syndrome. And the last thing is anorexia, appetite loss, and nausea in this group. But then we have also very many others, such as asthma, glaucoma, and so on. You understand this if you know that the endocrine system is in the whole body and it's counteracting every overactivity of other metals. That's the background. Next slide. So here are the diseases continued. No need that you read them all, but you see that it's very diverse. And I'm also, well, I'm working on cannabis since 1993, when I got into contact with Lester Green. And I was also surprised during the last nearly 30 years, which condition can be treated with cannabis. So this comes to the next issue. The 2 reasons why cannabis products are not the same medication as others. Well, the health authorities usually don't want to treat a molecule different to another. They want to treat it the same as other pharmaceuticals. But we have 2 reasons why we cannot treat it the same. The first reason is cannabis products are easily accessible by everybody, if not prohibited by law. You can plant it in your garden and it's growing like tomatoes. Patients do not have to wait until pharmaceutical companies have brought the molecules on the market. For example, we know some molecules in the pharmaceutical industry which will come on the market in 5 or 10 years. And people just have to wait. No other thing. If they know that cannabis works, they can grow it in their garden if it's not prohibited. So the question is, by which reason can governments prohibit access to this remedy? This is a major question which arises from this issue. And the second reason is why cannabis products are not the same medication as others is that they do not work in 2 or 5 or 10 conditions, which is usually the case. There is no other molecule on Earth which has such diverse functions than THC. Not nearly. 50 or 100. So the question is, how many decades do we have to wait until the potential is completely exploited in clinical studies? It will be decades. And then we will not be finished. Who will do a study on acne inversa in cannabis on anything? Some of them are rare diseases. So it is right to say as a scientist, I'm a doctor, I'm a scientist, I'm a political activist, it's right to say as a scientist, we need data. That's correct. But this is also often an excuse to not bring it to the people. First we need the data, then you are a patient, then you can have this plant. Sometimes this is an excuse. So, next one. So, now we come to the more political aspect of my talk, which I call the exocanonical system. And I put in advance a a judgment by the Federal Administrative Court in 2005, which is based on the Article 2 of the German Grundgesetz, which guarantees physical integrity. And the law said the right of physical integrity cannot only be violated in that bodies of the state themselves produce in our soul or inflict pain through their actions. The extent of protection of this fundamental right is also affected if the government takes measures to prevent a medical condition to be cured or at least be mitigated, and thereby physical suffering is continued and maintained needlessly. On the basis of this court decision, the German government had to give exemptions to people in need, exemptions from the narcotics law, so that people, patients in Germany, could use cannabis flowers. And they started a program that cannabis flowers can be got with this exemption. You could apply to a body of the health ministry, which is the Bundesopiumstelle or Federal Institute of Pharmaceuticals and I don't know English word. And then since January we had about 1,000 of these exemptions. And we went further in our court issues and said, well, it's nice to have cannabis flowers in the pharmacies, but people cannot afford it. So we want to have the right that people can plant it, grow it themselves. And in 2016, 2 patients got these exemptions. The same court was responsible for this. In 2016 says, well, these self-plantation, self-grown has to be allowed if there's no other means. And this forced the government in Germany to go another direction and say, okay, we want self-grow, we don't want that patients grow their own. We want that health insurance will reimburse cannabis flowers from the pharmacy. So, the next one. So, this is what I call the extra-cannabis system. This is a plant, the patient, the doctor, the scientist, the activist, journalist, the politician, the entrepreneur, the pharmacist, the artist, such as Tommy Trump. We are the extra-cannabis system, and we can help to bring the plant to the patient. This is our task. What is the role of the system? How can it best serve our world? So, next one. I will tell you something about my history to understand something of the political development. With some people, I founded the ACM, the German ACM, on 12th April 1997 in Cologne. So tomorrow is our 20th anniversary, and we will celebrate it in May. And it was the basis of the ICM, because I was contacted by people outside Germany, from Roger Pertwee or Cluster Greenspoon. Can't we make the ACM, the German ACM, international? Because the ACM was a very special group, because members were doctors, pharmacists, patients, and so there were patient groups, there were scientific organizations, but there was no group where all these people worked together. This was the ACM. And then we said, okay, then we have to found an international association, a scientific association, so that we can work together. And we formed the International Association for Cannabis Medicines in March 2007. In March 2000 in Cologne. It was founded in my living room. A nice group of people. Okay, next one. And we had a major impact on the development in Germany, of course. Okay, next one. Who is the ICM? It is the who is who of cannabis research. I don't know if you know some people here. Of course, Rafi Mechulan. I was the first chairman of the ACM, and I was followed by Rafi Mechulan. I was very honored that he went to the group. Mark War is from Canada, he's our current chairman. Ethan Russo, Donald Abrams. On the bottom you see Manuel Guzman or Vincenzo Macho. Very high you see our patient representatives, which is Max Bennett from Germany, or Sebastian Beguery from France, or Elson Burden from Canada. So we are usually scientists or doctors in the board. These are all board members or former board members, or former chairwoman. And they all usually play a major role in their country. For example, Kurt Klaas in Austria or Rudolf Bernals in Switzerland and so on. Donald Abrams, of course, in California and the USA and so on. So we are trying to, we are a very small family. And one advantages to work in this field is to meet very nice people, very nice scientists and doctors. So, next one. Here's our website. I'm doing the ICM bulletin every 2 weeks since 1998. I've put one here from 24 December 2000, Christmas 2000. When the Canadian government announced there will be a mine in Manitoba to produce cannabis flowers. Well, this is now a large database. You can search the ICM bulletin for any word. For example, irritable bowel syndrome, and you find all research which has been done in the last 17 years. So the next one, we have our ICM conferences every 2 years. It's a family meeting, you know. Usually, there are many conferences on medical cannabis, which are usually educational meetings. And when we meet, we exchange, experts exchange their ideas. And it's and we are supported by companies, you see, Better Crown or Stolz and Bigland. This is some kind of cooperation. We can make the best programs if we have the most money for a reason. Next one. The next will be in September in Cologne. You see also some other sponsors such as Tilray or Metcan, so Betanius. Well, of course you're welcome. Everyone can go there, but it will be more science than you may understand. But it is very interesting for doctors also to get a really good overview. We have, this year we will focus mainly on education. So we want that we open our family a little so that doctors can go. So the next idea after the ACM and the ICM was the medical cannabis declaration. This was another idea to make it international. Next one. The idea was make the access to medical cannabis by those in need a human right. I started with the federal court decision, which says something about human rights, and make this a human right, make a declaration that it is a human right to have access to cannabis. And of course bring associations and initiatives together. Since I work long in this field, I know many people around the world and many associations, and wanted to bring them together and support the foundation of new initiatives. In other countries, for example, currently in Latin America, much is happening. And educate everybody on the medical use of cannabis and cannabis, not only in English or German or French or Spanish. The ICM bulletin is published in 6 languages. But now the idea is to include Chinese, Hindi, Arab, Russian, and so on. To make it really a world issue. Currently it's more an issue of Europe and North America. Latin America is coming. There is also something in Africa, but we have to push it. That is going really international. So, next one. So here are the founders of the Medical Cannabis Declaration. You see some American organizations, some European associations from Italy or Switzerland or Germany, France, patients out of time from USA, Americans for Safe Success. Well, also nice people. Next one. So, the background of this declaration we made is the Declaration of Human Rights adopted by the United Nations in 1948. And it says in Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. What does it mean, life, liberty? And the second Article 25, paragraph 1 says, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and this right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, and sorrow. So, on this basis, we developed a declaration. Next one, yes. And the declaration says, the Declaration of Human Rights for Medical Access to Cannabis and Cannabis. Whereas this declaration applies to everyone and all people, whereas many doctors are banned by legal requirements from treating their patient with cannabis-based medicines, and whereas many people cannot afford access to cannabis-based drugs, we thus declare that, first, every medical doctor has the right to treat his or her patients with cannabinoids and cannabis products according to the rules of good medical care. And the second, every patient has the right to access cannabis and cannabinoids for medical treatment, supervised by a medical doctor, regardless of social status, standard of living, or financial needs. This is a fundamental right. So next one. Well, we are currently collecting another initiatives who are working with us, and we are collecting, looking also forward to work with companies. I'm always very happy that David Bronner from Dr. Bronner's is always supporting my work, so he's one of the supporters. But I invite you also. So, next one. So the main role of the extra-cannabinoid system is to bring the medical properties of the cannabis plant to the people in need. So this is our task. It will best serve our world if each part of the system is listening to and collaborating with each other. We call this empathy. And the result is energy and a win-win situation. We all profit from this. The patient will profit because he will get more relief. The doctor will profit because he has another treatment. The pharmacist will profit because he sells another product. The entrepreneur will profit because he will earn money. But we should never forget what it is about. It's not primarily on money. It is to bring the medical properties of the plant to the patient. And that has to be our vision. It's merely not so much about cannabis. It's more about medical care. When I first met Rafi Mechulam, we talked about it. What is the basis of the ICM? And says, okay, we are working on cannabis, but the main issue is the patient needs its medical care. So next one. Thank you very much.
We have time for maybe 2 questions before we have to move on. Does anybody have a question for the good people? Anybody? You up over there?
Ich würde gerne auf Deutsch fragen. Sie haben, glaube ich, eine Privatpraxis. Ich bin niedergelassener Allgemeinarzt und mich würde interessieren, wie die Ärzte das machen sollen, oder sind Ihnen da Informationen bekannt, dass wirklich jeder Zugang dazu haben kann? Die Ärzte sind ja budgetiert in ihren Medikamentenausgaben und wenn man das rechnet, was die Behandlungskosten können leicht 4.000, 5.000 Euro sein, wenn ich das richtig verstehe. Wie soll das funktionieren?
So this was more a question on the German situation, how patient Germany can get access to medicine. And I can tell you, we have an internal mailing list. The ACM has an internal mailing list of doctors, and we make exchange about problems and so. We can talk more internal than outside the news with the newsletter. So I invite you to send an email. And I put you on this internal mailing list, and where we discuss such special issues for doctors.
All right, thank you very much. One more time for Dr. Grotenhermen.